Hey, this is Schaun from Aampe, and this is a quick walkthrough of Relay. Relay is an app that interfaces with our main Composer product to create content at scale for agentic learners. Aampe provisions every end user of an app with an agent that communicates with that user, engages them, learns from those interactions, and comes to adapt to those users' preferences. In order to do that, the agent needs to be able to send out a lot of content. Not all at once, but it needs access to a large content library. So when it becomes appropriate to talk to that user about a particular thing, the agent has access to vocabulary that the business is okay with, that they've already pre-approved. Now, there's that volume issue, but there's also a semantic issue. Agents don't learn on words, they learn on meaning. So there are many different ways to phrase the same value proposition, the same tone of voice, the same product category. There's lots of different word combinations that could do that, but they all point to the same thing. You have a certain number of value propositions, a certain number of product categories, things like that. So we need to create content at scale that maps to that semantic layer that the agents can then use to learn. Relay is what allows you to do that. So it starts off with a query. You can see what I put in here. It's very minimalist. That you can put in a lot of details, you can put in a few details. It can work with anything. You don't have to put in details about your company or about your brand voice or anything like that. That actually all gets already imported from your Composer account. It's already available and it will be integrated in throughout the whole process. So really you just need to focus on the actual meaning that you want or intent that you want the message to convey. So we have a query in here, and then we are going to specify a format. We're going to put the offering category up here in the header, and then in the body we'll define a value proposition and a call to action. We will then preview that. It's going to generate an example. This is to give you just a notional idea of what the messages will look like. It's a sanity check. It also writes what's called a global contract. This is what takes all of that background information, your brand voice, your company info, consolidates it into different constraints that the LLM should be able to take advantage of and will be integrated into downstream processes. Once you have this, we're going to submit the preview. Now, if you want to change your example, you can. You can edit it here. You can regenerate. You can change your query to any way you like. But once the example is at least directionally what you think is a good idea, then you submit. Now, it's going to go through a lot of different processes here. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner as it tracks progress. So first is a component contract. There are 3 components here: offering, value proposition, call to action. It's going to feed in definitions, not only of the component in question, but also all of the other components, and it's going to define boundaries to make sure that when it talks about a value proposition, it's talking about a value proposition and not, say, an incentive. Then it will create alternates contracts. Each component is made up of multiple labels, semantic tags that the agents use to learn. It will feed those in and the alternatives, and it will define, again, boundaries. It will learn it will establish what the border conditions are for all of those. And then it will start generating candidates. It generates typically 6 candidates for every label for every component. And then it will go through a ranking process that ranks those alternates, that text, based on how well they fit the label and how well they fit the query. And it will pick the top 3. After it picks the top 3, it will go through some label compliance checks. If it finds that it generated text and picked text that didn't match the label all that great, it will feed in that feedback and it will try again, given that feedback. And in the end, what you have is 3 clear text alternates for every label in every component you have that fits your structure. We can expand it here so you can see all of them. It fits all of the structure that you delineated up here in your example. So you can see that the punctuation, capitalization, everything like that is appropriate for the structure that you set out in your example. If you are unhappy with anything here, if you're unhappy with, in general, say the call to action wasn't punchy enough, you can come in here and you can give feedback. All of these calls to action are a little, make them all a lot punchy. It will go through and it will process all of that and will change what it wrote to fit the feedback that you have given it. Once it goes through and finishes that with all of the labels, it closes up, and now you have your punchier calls to action. If there is specific alternates that you are unhappy with. For example, even with the label validation, sometimes it's just legitimately difficult to tell the difference between in terms of which label is appropriate. It will flag the ones that it had a hard time with, and it will give you an explanation of why in this case, for example, it's marked as accuracy, but in fact transparency might be a better option here because it talks about seeing your estimated refund and being able to review it. If you want to change something, you can always go in and edit it manually yourself, or you can come in and you can give feedback at the alternate level. You can describe what you want changed, and you can collaborate with the LLM until you get something you want. You can even come up and you can give feedback on the query itself, where you can flesh out your query more in conversation with an LLM, where every time you give feedback, the LLM, instead of just having a chat with you, will come back with a revised product, a revised query, so you can actually see what's going to be fed forward. There are other options. For example, if you want to restrict your messages to a particular label, for example, if we wanted to only go with a friendly tone for this one, you can do that as well. In the end, all of this produces content that is at the scale and variety that the agents need to keep a conversation going with the users, but all of that content is appropriately tagged with the semantic labels that the agents need in order to make decisions. The labels are what allow transfer learning. It allows the agents to realize that the last two messages were very useful and influenced the user a lot. The previous three messages weren't. What should it do because of that? It shouldn't send the same messages that were already successful. That would be redundant. It looks at the labels attached to those messages and connects that to additional opportunities, additional things that they could say, and pulls that information. This way you can keep your agents populated with lots of good content at the cost of very little effort on your part. You become less of a copywriter and more of an editor, where the LLM does a lot of the nitty-gritty work, but you're able to go through and verify and mold and adjust as needed. That's Relay. Thanks.